Welcome to Envision Skateboards and EnvisionSkateboards.com. I'm Brett Smith, and if you watched our introductory video, you'll realize that we're doing a series of videos that take you through a step-by-step process on how to finish an Envision Skateboard Kit. We want as many people out there as possible to get a kit and put their own graphics on it and enjoy the colors and designs they want, but we don't want you to be afraid of finishing your kit. So we're going to break this down and try to make it as simple as possible so that you'll know just how to finish your kit. But let me start with what you get in a kit. So what comes in an Envision Skateboard Kit is an Envision Skateboard blank in one of three sizes: the 32-inch kicktail, the 38-inch longboard, and a 42-inch longboard. For this demonstration, I'm using a 38-inch longboard. So you get the high quality hardwood and fiber fabric composite blank, and then you also get some finishing epoxy resin to finish the board once you put your graphics on it. And it seals the board completely and will preserve your graphics indefinitely. Also with the kit, you get two paint brushes, and this is what you put the epoxy resin on, top and bottom. And you also get 4 pieces of sandpaper. You may or may not use all the sandpaper. When we cut a blank out, we do a rough sanding, which is actually not just a rough sanding, but is actually a pretty complete sanding. You'll see when a board is cut out, it has some pretty sharp edges here. So we take a 100 grit sandpaper and we round those edges off and sand the top and bottom and get them ready to go in a kit. So if you were to just take the board as is out of the kit and put the graphics on it, and seal it with the finishing resin, you would be just fine. But some people would rather do a little more sanding on their board, and for that reason we include a 150 grit sandpaper for that. Along with the 150 grit sandpaper is a 220 grit, a 360 grit, and a 600 grit, and those are for later finishing of the epoxy finish if you want to. So when you get your blank that's mostly sanded, if you want to sand it more and make the edges rounder, make it smoother, I wouldn't suggest going anything past a 150 because we want to keep it semi-rough to soak up that finishing resin and make a good complete seal. But if you decide you want to shape it a little bit more, round the edges a little bit more, and some people decide to put a lot of time in their board. I've had people spend as little as 15 minutes sanding the board rough and going on to the graphics. Had other people take a whole hour sanding the board and getting it just exactly the way they want it. But they were in no rush, and they wanted to finish it just the way they wanted it. So you decide how much time you want to put into it. But if you decide to sand the board more, I would suggest doing it in a methodical way so that you get it nice and even. I always start, and I do the rough sanding on these with some of the workers, and I always start on one edge of it. And I'll sand down the edge, knock all the edge off of it, sand back up the edge, and sand the side of it real smooth. So I have one side done. Then I'll move to the top of the board and finish that. Then I'll flip over and I'll do the other side. Get that smooth, rounded off, the side smooth, and then I'll move to the bottom of the board. Once I finish the bottom of the board, then I know it's done, and I've done it in a methodical way. Then I'll go back and I'll look at it a little bit closer. There may be some things I wanted to smooth out a little bit more. Maybe a little bit of a nick in the side from the cutting out. Maybe a little scratch in the top. There may be something that you want to take a little bit more time with. But that's up to you, and you take all the time you want. The one thing I want to say about when you're sanding the board, if you do decide to sand it, be very careful and sand not too heavily. Don't push into the board real hard. This is a hardwood, but it's a fine-grained hardwood, and if you push down too hard and get the edges underneath that grain, it can actually pop the grain up. And if that happens, you glue it back down and sand it off. But if you take the time and just take your time, go smoothly, go with the grain. I always start with the widest part of the board and sand down to the smaller part of the board, and that also helps not to have the edge of the sandpaper go into the grain. So just treat it like you would a fine piece of furniture. If you want to finish it real nice and sand it real nice. and just take your time and do it real easy. When we do a rough sanding, we eliminate the boards that have the worst problem with the grain, and some of those boards we'll put on the blemish site or page on our website and offer them for a little bit less money. But that's what you do to get your Envision Skateboard Kit started. Once you have the smoothness just the way you want it, the next step is to put your design graphics on. It's that simple, and we're going to go into that in the next video.